Chris, I think you can mute him.
Yeah.
What's going on?
That's good. Yeah.
That works perfectly. Yeah, we can hear you and see in different screens, but
Okay, Jim, you can still hear us, right?
Yep.
Yep. All right, here we go. Item number 5 on tonight's agenda, approval of minutes from the last 2 meetings. Number 5.1, approval of the minutes from our meeting from November 24th, 2025, a copy of which was previously distributed to the commission. Do we have any comments, questions, or a motion on those?
I'll move to approve the minutes as written.
I second.
All those in favor? Aye? Aye.
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 Any opposition or abstention? Okay, that's approved for November 24th, 2025 minutes. And that'll bring us to the next set of minutes for approval, the minutes from December 8th, 2025. Same routine. Any comments, questions, or proposals or motions?
I'll
I
make a
move
motion
to-
to approve as written.
Go ahead, Brian.
Do we have a second?
I second.
Okay, we have the motion to approve as written in a second. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
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 Anyone oppose or abstain? Okay, great. That brings us to item number 6 on tonight's agenda, the public section comment. The purpose of the public comment is to allow community members to present information or raise issues that are not on tonight's agenda. Iris, do we have anyone? I don't see anyone in the Zoom that wants to raise an issue not on tonight's agenda.
Correct. No one signed up.
Okay, great. Thank you. By the way, I skipped section 4. Apologies. I skipped section 4 on tonight's agenda, which was supposed to be the new council liaison update, but I understand that the new council member liaison will be present at the next meeting, and we will get back with the council updates.
yeah, I can at least give you a brief update on our council liaison. We do have a new council liaison, so just to note that we will have Councilor Rachel Burdick will be the Planning Commission liaison for 2026. We've already been talking, and she's excited and yeah, has indicated her preference to be here at least one of the 2 meetings that we hold per month, so on a monthly basis. So yeah, we will have a more consistent presence, and that should be a more regular agenda item, at least on the meetings when she's able to attend.
Great.
That's great.
Looking forward to that. It's great to get council updates during these meetings, so we really appreciate that.
Yeah, I think it'll be a helpful connection that we haven't had for the last year. So
Okay. Sorry for going out of order there, folks. But that was item number 4 on tonight's agenda. We've already done 5 and we've already done 6. That brings us to item number 7, the Commission for Citizen Involvement General Updates. I have 3 updates here for you. The first one is the Lake Forest Neighborhood Association Potluck and Neighborhood Meeting, the annual dessert potluck and neighborhood meeting. It will be held Wednesday, January 21st, 2026, in the Fireside Community Room of Our Savior's Lutheran Church. The meeting will cover topics that affect the neighborhood, including development and the completion through Aluga Park and the zoning change and public hearing on 4000 Kruse Way Place. Again, that is January 21st, 2026. It starts at 6 p.m. The next one is the first edition Neighbors in Forest Hills Neighborhood Association annual meeting. Will be held Wednesday, February 4th at the Adult Community Center, 505 G Avenue. The doors open at 6 and the meeting begins at 6:30. There seems to be a lot of items on the agenda, including the Forest Hills Elementary rebuild update, sustainable landscaping, South Shore Fire Station, and nomination and election of boards and officers. Again, that is Wednesday, February 4th, beginning at 6:30 p.m. And finally, I have a postcard here from the Lakewood Neighborhood Association meeting. It will be held January 22nd, 2026 from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. And this will be held at the Lakewood Center of the Arts in the downstairs meeting room, the side door entrance on Ridgeway. The agenda is quite a few items. You will hear from the Lake Oswego Corporation, Organization for Emergency Preparedness, learning about other city initiatives, and conducting the board elections. Again, that's the Lakewood Neighborhood Association meeting on January 22nd, 2026 at 6:30 p.m. Okay, that will take us into the next item on tonight's agenda, item 8.1, the findings, conclusion, and order from the previous hearing that we completed. This is the hearing on 4,000 Kruse Way Place rezoning. It is LU 25-0029. If everyone recalls, on December 8th, we issued a preliminary recommendation for the city council to approve the proposed comprehensive plan map and zoning map amendments at 4,000 Kruse Way Place, and we directed staff to return with a draft finding conclusions in order. That draft finding conclusions order was previously distributed to the commissioners for review. I guess now we're going to see if there's anyone any comments or questions about that draft, the draft findings, conclusions, and orders. Okay. None. Absent any comments, questions, or proposed changes or edits, then I think our next step is to vote on tentatively approving the recommendation as drafted and sending it to City Council. So I'll wait for a motion.
Are we making a motion to vote or a motion to approve?
A motion to approve, and then we'll vote on the
Yeah,
motion.
I'll make a motion to approve as presented.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Seconded.
Okay, we have a second from Jim. Iris, if you want to call the vote on this one.
Mitchell,
I vote yes.
Moreno,
Yes.
Najak,
Yes.
Guinea,
Yes.
Twing,
Yes.
and Bruce.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion passed.
Thank you. And I think that concludes our work on that one. It'll be going to City Council. And just thank you to all the fellow commissioners and to you staff, especially because I know that one's been a long one, and we've had hearings and we heard a lot from the public. So appreciate everyone's attention and hard work on getting to this recommendation to the City Council. Item number 9, work session. This is the Planning Commission and Commission for Citizen Involvement 2026 work plan. This is work session 1. We're going to review and provide direction on a preliminary work plan to support the relevant 2026 City Council goals and initiatives. I'll turn it over to Long Range Planning Manager, Mr. Olson.
Thank you, Chair Mitchell, or at least outgoing Chair Mitchell. And yeah, thank you, commissioners. Yeah, I think we really wanted to talk today to think a little bit in advance about some goals that we can be setting for the year for the Planning Commission. Of course, we're working on a work plan for the Planning Commission right now, but what I had relayed in that memo was really more of a summary of accomplishments and things that we kind of are required to take on this year, as well as projects that we anticipate beginning in 2026. So we're kind of getting into work plan, but I just wanted to clarify a bit that we will actually be not necessarily postponing this discussion, but the discussion will extend a little bit longer than it might in other years, because we will want to sort of take into account what the council goals are. Of course, we have the summit this week where we'll be talking with City Council about potential goals that could be generated, but the actual goal setting retreat for council has been postponed until later in February. So I just wanted to let you know, this is a little bit preliminary, and there's still a lot of discussions to be had once we know more about that goal setting. So I think it's February 23rd. Is that right? When the council goal setting will be, or Jessica actually knows?
It's February 21st. So it's that
21st. Okay.
it's a Saturday. Yeah.
So probably in early March is the soonest that we'll come back and talk about this again. But I want to make sure we're kind of in alignment at least on some of the highlights and achievements from last year, and that we talk about them and talk about what to expect for the coming year. So with that, I'll just give a brief summary of what was in that staff memo. I don't have a presentation or anything formal for you tonight. It'll be relatively informal, but I'll start with a summary of what we accomplished this last year in 2026. One of the first things that the Planning Commission was able to recommend approval of, and it was eventually approved by City Council, was the 2024 Annual Community Development Code amendments. So had called those the 24 through 25 amendments on a few occasions, but it's hard to call it an annual amendment when it's spanning 2 years. So anyway, I'll just keep it at 2024, but those were some a big package of amendments. We expect to see those again relatively soon for 2026. But I think we're also talking about potentially combining those with the code audit project and including a lot of what we might have recommended for inclusion in our annual code amendments and that larger kind of code audit project, because it's a very similar end that we're trying to achieve with that. So anyway, just to sort of summarize this, though, it was the 2024 amendments were approved on April 15th and formally adopted on the 6th by City Council. Another big accomplishment for the Commission last year was to, or at least close the loop really on Senate Bill 1537. Of course, this is the bill that was passed by the state. I believe it was in 2024 when it was passed. And we've been kind of sorting through the ramifications of the bill. Staff ended up applying for an exemption to the mandatory adjustment provisions of Senate Bill 1537. And we talked a bit about this on May 28th, and we talked about the HPS in general and what the implementation looked like that, May 28th of 2025, as well as on October 27th of 2025, where Johanna appeared at the Planning Commission and told us a little bit more about our request for an exemption, which was approved by the state's new Housing Accountability and Production Office, or HAPO. And so, there are some provisions, or I'm sorry, there's some conditions that came along with that approval that we discussed in a little bit more detail, but ultimately no additional action was needed there because we were approved for that amendment, or I'm sorry, for that exemption rather. Another sort of large project that we talked about at the Commission a few times this year was the fair housing policy and education work and the adoption of an amendment to the comprehensive plan to formalize the city's policy to affirmatively further fair housing. So that was something that was outlined originally in the HPS that we wanted to push forward as one of the first kind of official implementation projects after the adoption of the HPS, which was adopted in late 2024. So we held our first work session on January 27th and got an early start here and got a presentation from Samuel Goldberg of the Fair Housing Council of Oregon, or at least he was at that time. He's actually with the state now, been talking to him a bit about sort of HPS related obligations and things of that nature. So we haven't seen the last of Samuel, but we did get a good presentation from the Fair Housing Council back in January. And then we held a work session to talk a little bit, again, about HPS implementation more broadly. Of course, we touched on this at that point, and then talked a little bit more in detail about the actual comprehensive plan amendment on July 28th. So it was eventually approved by the Planning Commission on September 8th, and then, or at least a recommendation for approval was issued by the Commission at that point, and then City Council formally approved it on November 4th. So it has now passed, though, of course, this is more of an ongoing effort. So we had initially, when we put this in the HPS, had sort of a near-term and a longer-term component to this strategy. So we've completed the near-term, sort of just that adoption of the comprehensive plan amendment to codify the city's affirmatively furthering fair housing policy. But we are going to be continuing to engage in this ongoing campaign to spread awareness about fair housing and education. So this is something that won't necessarily completely come to an end at any point in the near future, and that we'll be continuing to implement. Something that I think we had a lot of back and forth with both between the planning commission and between the planning commission and staff and with city council. Of course, the home occupation code amendments, I think I get the impression that the commission is probably glad to have cleared those through. At least it was a little bit of a difficult conversation there on those code amendments for the home occupations. But of course, that is something that the commission did recommend adoption of late last year and that we held 3 work sessions on last year. So, of course, occupied a good chunk of the commission's work. And a public hearing is scheduled for that at City Council in just a couple weeks. Actually, yeah, on the 20th, so not too incredibly far into the future here. The council's next meeting is when that hearing will take place. So that's some serious progress, even if it was a bit difficult along the way, I suppose. It was something new for the commission, and we just formally adopted findings for this, of course. But it was the quasi-judicial rezoning application that was considered for 4,000 Kruse Way Place. And Chair Mitchell, outgoing Chair Mitchell, just kind of thanked us all for our work on that. And I just want to echo that and say, we don't get a lot of these requests at the Planning Commission. So the number of comments and just kind of the level of process was not typical for what we usually get at the commission. And I really appreciate everybody's efforts to, move that forward. And I think we crossed our T's and dotted our I's as appropriately as we can for that application. And I think things went well. So I appreciate everybody making that happen. Of course, that's a private application, so it's hard to take too much credit for that as staff or as the commission. But of course, I think we did our duty to hold a public hearing, of course, on October 27th. It was then continued to allow for the submission of additional written testimony until December 8th. And that was when the commission voted to recommend approval of that application. So, of course, we adopted findings just tonight, and it will see a public hearing at City Council on February 3rd. So again, not too far into the future. So the commission's component of that project has been fulfilled, as we noted a moment ago, but eventual adoption would not take place until next month. So those are the ones that the Planning Commission's role, at least, has been sort of fulfilled for. There are some other really important ongoing projects. Of course, this is really a large project that touches on a lot of different pieces, but the implementation of the housing production strategy is something that we expect to dominate a lot of this year for staff, at least, and we expect to get a lot of Planning Commission activity as well related to the housing production strategy. I think many of you are familiar with it, but we did outline 13 different strategies within that document to meet the needs that were outlined in the housing needs analysis, which was adopted the year prior in 2023. One of the bigger milestones, I guess, that we accomplished last year was to actually get formal approval from the state of our housing production strategy, which we formally received on April 18th of 2025. And sort of saw which conditions were accompanying that from the state. And of course, we talked about that soon after at the commission, also talked about that at City Council, gave them a bit of an update on that. And it relates to a lot of different projects that we'll be pursuing for the coming years. Obviously, the fair housing project that I just mentioned, but also the code audit and rezoning projects that I will mention very soon. One thing that I would mention in terms of a near-term action or sort of event that we'll be holding at the Planning Commission is we will, or I will be providing you with an update on the recently adopted, or at least as of late last year, these were adopted, Oregon Housing Needs Analysis Framework. So that will be at your meeting on February, that will be at your meeting on February 23rd. We'll also have a similar update to City Council on February 17th. So we'll actually have Samuel Goldberg from the state now coming in to give that update to council, but I'm going to do my best to just kind of relay that information to you all because, I think we were lucky to get him for just that one council meeting, and I don't want to overextend Samuel. But I would at least say that we can at least review that meeting record at City Council if there's some interest in seeing what he had to say. But again, I will do my best to talk about that. I think We'll get into more detail, of course, when that comes closer to being the subject of our meeting, but it's worth noting that one of the really major components of that is actually that our housing needs sort of target, or our sort of production target rather, will be a little bit different. It'll be generated a lot differently than it had been for the last 2023 housing needs analysis. And will be a little bit more tied to a statewide allocation of housing need that is then distributed to sort of different areas of the state. Of course, housing need was largely distributed to the Portland metro region through Metro. And so we'll be working with Metro actually in the coming weeks to start that conversation about population growth estimates, et cetera. But for the most part, these things will be calculated much differently than they were in the past. And long story short, we will have a larger need in terms of the number of units than we did under the previous kind of framework. So we'll get into more of that detail on the 23rd of February. Of course, there's the tree regulation project as well. The staff, really the planning department in general, is taking on a lot of large, significant projects in this year and in the past couple of years as well. So of course, lots of things related to housing. We had the CFAC removal of minimum parking mandates and sort of a large parking related project. And this is another really hot topic in, of course, the Lake Oswego community. Tree code, and not just the tree code, quote unquote, which is not necessarily the same as the development code that the Planning Commission deals with, but we are of course going to be talking about that more throughout 2026, and did conduct a few work sessions last year on July 28th and December 8th. So as you've talked about recently with Jessica at our work session, the last work session that we held on December 8th again. There's also an ad hoc tree task force that's been meeting around that project and will continue to meet throughout 2026 until that project is closer to fruition. And of course, we have made some progress with the rezoning for housing project. Michael McNamee will be leading that work. And basically, we talked about that in the context of the housing production strategy and its implementation last year. It is a component of the housing production strategy, and we did conduct a work session with the Planning Commission about that, just to talk about kind of the general scope of that project. But for the most part, we're still kind of in the early phases of this work. We were awarded with a DLCD housing planning assistance grant for this project last year. And we ended up going with DLCD's option to work with one of their sort of in-house consultants. They have a grouping of consultants, kind of an in-house roster of consultants that they can assign to cities for projects like this. Of course, we could have opted to do an RFP as well, but we decided to go with, I guess, a simpler option for this particular project. And we ended up being awarded or being, I guess, matched with, rather, the consultant team at Cascadia Partners. And we'll be working with Jamin Kimmel, who was around for a lot of the middle housing work that we did back in, I think it was 2022 when much of that was happening. So, we have a history of working with them, and they do great work. And I think it'll be a really good consultant team to work on for that project. So that's something that we'll be talking with you about sooner than later. We're still working to complete the contract with that consultant team and work with DLCD on the specifics of the scope. So we're still refining that, but that is something that we anticipate getting going this year and then completing by the end of 2027. So that will be a large project that could be somewhat contentious, but it will be a sort of more systematic look at areas of the city that could be upzoned to add residential density that would meet the needs identified in that housing needs analysis. And on a similar sort of side of things, we also have the code audit and amendments for housing and business. This is similar in that it is a housing production strategy related project, but it is sort of also looking at not just housing, but economic development and business activity as well. So really working to identify barriers in the code to either the development of housing or business activity and economic development. And another project where we have also procured a grant, this time from Metro, so a little bit more similar to the process we used for the Foothills project. We are currently working to finalize the intergovernmental agreement with Metro, again, kind of negotiations about the scope and just kind of refinements, but expect to get out a RFP in February for that project. And we'll have at least the IGA approved by council in February, and then hoping to issue the RFP very soon after. And we anticipate that that will be finished by August 2027, but it's probably more like the end of 2027, whereas the grant only goes up the that period in August 2027. So that's just one clarification. And of course, Foothills. That's something that I have been deeply, deeply involved with, and working on a very sort of aggressive, if you will, basis, working quite a bit about that, dedicating a lot of my hours to this project. So excited to come to you at our next meeting in January, on January 26th, to share some of the results of our first round of analysis and our look at existing conditions in that area. So we'll have our consultant team from First 40 Feet, who we brought on to help us with that project. They presented to you back on August 25th, talking about our public involvement strategy for that project. But now that we have a little bit more work conducted and have a little bit more to share with you, we wanted to come talk about the results of that work and the results of that kind of existing condition inventory phase, and think about how that should sort of frame where we end up going with some of the conceptual alternatives that will be developed in a next stage of the project. So really trying to transition from that existing conditions analysis to visioning with you. So we'll be meeting both at the end of this month to talk about what we found in terms of the existing conditions, and our next meeting would be scheduled for early March to then talk about translating that into a vision for the area. And so we'd be talking a little bit higher level principles, vision, not necessarily conceptual, actual sort of on the ground physical designs at that point, but we will be going through that process throughout the year. So a lot of progress to be made on that project this year. And of course, there are many different advisory committees for that. We have both a technical advisory and a community advisory committee, and we'll be holding some open houses and things in the coming month, or coming months rather, probably at the end of February. We'll have an open house on that. We have a community advisory committee meeting tomorrow, actually, for the project, and lots of other kind of events and sort of outreach that we have scheduled going on there. So lots of activity, and we actually just released a story map for the project. So we have these more technical documents where you can go through and kind of read the what we're calling a field guide with the findings. And we also have this kind of interactive, what we're calling a story map tool, its own website where you can go through that information. There's lots of opportunities for members of the public to weigh in and answer some questions and start providing input there as well. So really have a larger kind of communications campaign right now to spread the word about that, and are trying to spread that around. I think we sent that out to all the boards and commissions, so hopefully you got that as well.
Yeah, thank you for your work on the Foothills, Eric. It's really like coming together so fast.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, we spent a lot of time getting the consultant on board, but now that they're on board, we're really getting a lot of work done quickly, and it's fun to finally get into the sort of pen to paper stage that we're going to be entering in the next couple of months. So, of course, things are still very conceptual and still yet to be determined, but we have a pretty aggressive schedule. So I guess I'll pause there. That's really an overview of projects where we've already seen this to some extent at the Planning Commission, and some of them are complete, but a lot of them are projects that were just from a staff level, we're going to have to dedicate a lot of time and energy to these projects, and anticipate that much of our energy will be going towards those projects for the most part this year. But I guess I can just really quickly pause and ask if there's any questions about what I just covered.
I don't have any questions about it. I think that was a great summary. At the end, it's got this recommendation that says that we should provide some direction on the top 3 commission accomplishments from 2025, as well as top 3 themes or ideas. that the commission would like city council to consider for their 2026 goal setting session. Is that what we should do now?
Yeah, I think now's probably the best time to talk about the accomplishments piece at least. And so, I guess I could make some guesses as to what you might pick as your biggest accomplishments, but I was leaning towards thinking that the home occupations work probably wasn't going to be something that you want to highlight. But otherwise,
not yet, not yet.
otherwise, yeah, I think with that, I guess I'd just say that's my assumption, but that's obviously open to discussion. But I guess my thoughts, if this might help generate some discussion, would be the affirmatively furthering fair housing project. Even though it's a private application, I think that 4,000 Kruse Way Place was a big project that we saw come here to the commission, and also one that will have a tangible impact on the community. I think it's a significant accomplishment nonetheless. And yeah, I think we could talk about our work on the tree regulations project. Of course, nothing was formally adopted. We could talk about the annual code amendments from 2024. There's also different things that we could talk about as accomplishments, and they don't necessarily have to be things that were formally adopted in 2025. But yeah, what are some of your thoughts on accomplishments from last year? I know we're in this phase where we have these quite long projects that take a while to kind of become a little bit more real, and then obviously multi-year projects to adoption. So not a lot of those came to fruition last year. 2024 was the adoption of our housing production strategy, which kind of gave us a work plan for the coming 6 years at that point. So we're really just kind of getting started on that. So I hope this doesn't make you think that we're not doing anything in the planning department. We are staying very busy despite not having formally adopted as much as usual last year.
No, I think everyone knows that you guys have definitely been busy, and the information that we get always seems very well prepared. From your list, I look at item 3, 6, and 8 as kind of some of the things that I would want to highlight, focusing on the work on fair housing, housing production strategy, and rezoning for housing. I think, you see a common theme there, but, that is one of our top concerns is, how can we expand affordable housing throughout our community? And I think those items definitely highlight some of the work that I feel like we should be proud of over the last year or so.
Yeah, so that's the affirmatively furthering fair housing. I
Mhm.
think just general HPS implementation, which it is kind of an overlap, I guess, a little bit with that, but I'm okay with that. And the third one that you suggested was the rezoning for housing
Yeah.
project, or that
And then I
one,
guess number 10, the foothills as well. I feel like we're still kind of in at least from the commission's point of view, we're still kind of being presented information and not really being asked to analyze or decide too much on that yet. I'm excited to, again, like Commissioner Najak said, I'm excited to see, how that progress, continues on that project. But I can't say that I feel like that's a huge accomplishment for the commission.
a little premature. Yeah.
Not quite yet, but I'm really excited about it for sure.
Cool. All right. Well, is there some consensus, I guess, about those 3 projects that Commissioner Bruce mentioned?
The rezoning, that's for 4,000 Kruse Way.
The rezoning that Commissioner Bruce suggested was just the project, which really, the main progress we made last year was getting the grant for that approved by DLCD.
Okay.
But it could be inclusive of that as well. But I think, like I said, it's it is a separate project that's kind of scoped in and of itself, that we anticipate getting going pretty soon here.
Yeah. To me, I think when I think of how the public responded and the most interaction the public had all year with us was definitely that land use application. So I think as far as for better for worse, how we may or may not have aligned with the public's voices, I do think that was a significant moment for the Planning Commission to provide input on and guide the community.
Yeah, we don't have many of those opportunities at the Planning Commission. We don't get applications like that very often, so it is a unique opportunity. Yeah.
Or for the public to come into the meetings.
Well,
Period.
they're always welcome to come in. It's just some things generate a little bit more passion than others. So,
Right.
Yes.
yeah, it's we didn't. It was a lot more sort of formal, of course, in the sort of the procedure, I guess, for the hearing and pro or con, but of course, we do somewhat similar process for a lot of our legislative hearings, like for the adoption of the HPS or something. But yeah, this, I think it's similar to something that would be at the DRC in terms of the number of people that showed up and had comments.
Well, I appreciate the work that staff does and all the time and all the work that goes behind each one of these items. It's just so much. And um, I I trust you to recommend the ones that were, the ones that you're most proud of because you did all the work.
Well,
That's just my
you helped, of
opinion.
course, too. You all did quite a bit too. So of course, yeah, I appreciate that though. And yeah, I think we definitely have some overlap on the affirmatively furthering fair housing project. I think that seems like a one that we're in alignment on. I know Rachel, you suggested the 4,000 Kruse Way Place. That's something I think we could add to the list, but there not everybody was on the same page with that. So it's up to you
Yeah.
as whether you want to kind of take credit for that. Um, and yeah, I think we can talk about housing production strategy implementation more broadly. That's totally fine as kind of an accomplishment for 2025. There's just so many balls in the air. So we talked about Senate Bill 1537. We talked about other kind of pending land use legislation that we're going to have to address in the near future. We had a quasi-judicial rezoning application. We had all these things that kind of are related to the HPS that we're not just tracking those individual projects, but we're tracking that as a larger project too. So anyway, I think it's fair to kind of double dip in that way, if you will. But yeah, any other input on that? I got input from some of you, but just want to make sure there's nothing else that folks want to say before we move forward.
I'll make a second, I guess, for 4,000 Kruse Way. If nothing more to memorialize that, we should expect either the DRC or the Planning Commission or the full City Council or others more of these type of applications in the future than less as we move towards, the city of Lake Oswego is landlocked by the urban growth boundary. There's only a finite amount of both land suitable for housing and industrial land for traded sector jobs and things like that. And I thought it was important to me to see that, hey, this process works and seemed to work very well. Not the fastest, but like we went through the process, as many folks were included and the sides were heard and the issues. But if you have a project that conforms to a zoning change, land use, reuse of your property, and you're in the city of Lake Oswego, this is a great place to do business, and you will get a fair hearing and you will get to move your project forward. Like, I think that's important that, not only that the community inside the city of Lake Oswego sees that and demonstrates that to the credit of the staff, but folks outside of the city that are looking to either relocate or expand or come into the city and do business there. So that's my thoughts on that. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner Guinea. Yeah, I think I think we could talk about 4,000 Kruse Way Place, permanently furthering fair housing, and maybe just the ongoing HPS work more broadly as the three accomplishments. Do folks feel generally comfortable with those? Okay.
Sounds good to me. Yeah.
I do.
Yeah,
Yep.
that'd be great.
All right, sounds good. I appreciate it. And yeah, I really just have a very small portion of the new work for 2026. So I guess that gives you a sense of just how much we're going to be kind of continuing with the projects that we're talking about, that we started talking about last year. So really, foothills, the rezoning, and the code audit are going to be huge components of what we talk about in the near future here. But I want to mention also that we will be talking about another component of the HPS, which is the adoption of a low-income rental housing tax exemption. And that's something that Jessica has been looking into, and we'll be talking about in a little bit more detail with the commission in the coming year, if not, sooner than the end of the year, I think probably. And yeah, that's just kind of a tax exemption that would be similar to one that was adopted by the city council a couple years back that was just targeted towards nonprofits. And I believe I think Hacienda took advantage of that particular tax exemption for the El
Yes, we
Nido site.
have.
So Commissioner Knauschak is familiar. So yeah, this would be something similar to that, but would not just be oriented towards nonprofits. And it's something that we want to talk about at the Planning Commission, although Planning Commission action isn't, I think, technically required for the adoption of that. It's something that would just go to City Council, but it is something that we want your input on regardless. So, or at least to keep you apprised of everything going on. So we will be discussing that. So that's really, yeah, a bit of work that we haven't really initiated so far, but just given the sort of need to apply for grants and the length of time that it takes for those grants, I think we'll actually be starting a lot of projects in terms of actual contracting and a consultant on board that we've already talked about it at the Planning Commission. So yeah, I think like I said, I think in terms of staff priorities, really the foothills, the rezoning, and the code audit are big priorities this year. But that's staff. So I want to talk to you about what you think the commission's goals are for the year. And of course, I just want to add another caveat, I guess, before we get into this, that we do want to, this may change, I guess, depending on the council's goals. I doubt that it'll be very different. Again, a lot of what we're talking about is work that we've already initiated, but we will want to circle back on this once we hear more about what their goals are for 2026. So this is really our initial take, and we'll have another pass. So with that, how do folks feel about the 3 things that you're excited for 2026? Or do you have anything to add to that list? Are you comfortable with the 3 projects that I talked about there, or do you have any additional suggestions?
Keeping the momentum on foothills and housing production strategy.
Agree.
Yep.
Yeah, the code audit and rezoning are going to be 2 of the biggest housing production strategy projects, and 2 of the projects that will have probably the biggest impact, I would say, in terms of overall production. So
Agreed. Co-signed on what Brian said.
all right, well, I don't want to belabor this, so I appreciate the input. Let me know if you have any other thoughts. Again, we'll continue this conversation likely in early March.
Thank you, Eric.
And of course, at the Boards and Commission Summit. So I guess
Yeah.
it's related enough to our 2026 goals. I'll just talk a little bit about the Boards and Commission Summit. So that's, again, we've already talked about this a little bit, but it's very much related to 2026 and what we're going to be taking on as a city. So I just mentioned that, we're also, obviously going to be meeting on Thursday night at 5:30 at the Adult Community Center, but it is a little bit of a different structure this year, and it's going to take the format of a think tank. I've been informed, and the idea is to generate new ideas from the community, sort of outside of the box ideas that enhance the Lake Oswego community. So it's really open-ended. It doesn't even need to be specific to planning, although I'm sure that that's most likely what your inclinations will be. But it is supposed to be, again, this sort of outside the box kind of ideas are very much accepted. They don't need to be scoped or funded or anything of that nature. It's really a brainstorming session, I think, but it's going to be a little bit more structured like a Shark Tank or a show like that, I think, this time. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But yeah, I just want to give you a heads up that you know, your ideas will be not only welcomed, but you will be asked to come up with a concrete, sort of discrete idea to present in that format. And I think initially you'll present it amongst a group. You'll be in like a small group and you'll talk about it. And I think the idea is that one idea will kind of emerge and then go compete with the rest of the ideas that emerge from the other groups. So
And this is for
just wanted to give you a
city,
heads up.
this is for city council and then the different commissions. Will there be community members there as well?
Typically we don't invite outside community members. There is a large presence of community members on all the boards and commissions, but it's primarily intended for just boards and commissions. So members of obviously the Planning Commission, but Development Review Commission, you know, the
And the city council
Sustainability Advisory Board, City Council, all the council members are there. It's
and
led
the
by the mayor.
city manager there.
Yes, she's usually the one that facilitates the event, or at least their office will. And yeah, I mean, there's, you know, all the different boards and commissions will be able to weigh in. So,
But it's not on the record.
No, I
Um,
don't think it is.
No.
I don't think it's on the record, and they don't like record the meeting or anything like that. And I will say, the city manager is out this week, so she will not
right.
be at this
Right.
boards and commissions. But I do believe the assistant city manager Megan Phelan will be there in her place. But no, we haven't recorded the meetings, or you know, they aren't considered formal meetings in as far as I recall.
And that doesn't trigger any kind of quorum requirements or anything like that. I guess I'm sort of still learning all that stuff.
No, it's kind of a informal brainstorming session, and it's yeah, it's a typical sort of event that city council likes to conduct in early January. You know, obviously the city manager's office is the one that throws it, but it's really to inform city council goal setting. So they always conduct their goal setting after the summit and sort of take those ideas into consideration, and then their kind of goals are developed based on that input. So that's kind of the general process. So there will be, you know, summaries of the events, but it won't be recorded per se. You know, summaries of particularly the ideas that emerge from the sort of think tank.
Sort
style
of
event.
intimidated. I've never been asked to be on Shark Tank before or anything like that. So
Yeah,
it's
Yeah,
The
it's
last, the last one that I went to was kind of fun. It was like a brainstorming session, and you have you know, just post-its and notes and markers, and then you have a note taker that's just, you know, just one of those typical retreats where you're brainstorming.
yeah.
Like
I'll be there and I'll be note
refreshments.
taking.
Yeah, light refreshments like charcuterie stuff, and yeah, it's
Yeah,
very
I agree.
informal.
It was fun.
Yeah.
It's light, it's fun. It'll be a different structure, as I mentioned this year, but I think it'll probably just be more light and more fun, probably because of this.
And then
But I think
everybody
it'll
laughs because everybody wants food trucks and they're not going to do it.
well, you know, that's
Never say
you never know what'll
never.
come out this year. Yeah, yeah.
Foothills
Um,
redevelopment.
yeah, that's where all the food trucks will go. Yeah, we had to figure out how the food trucks are going to get there in the first place. So that's
Where they're
the
going to park.
big- yeah. So yeah, just a heads up. This is all related to goal setting. So I just wanted to kind of let you know about the kind of uncommon structure of that event, but really encourage you all to come. And I think it'll be a fun one. And this is really your opportunity to talk to City Council about what you want to be doing this year. So. Or what you want other departments to do as well.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Sounds like fun.
Yeah, I would encourage you all to join if you're available. But yeah, otherwise, I think I have what I need for the top threes. So thanks, Chair Mitchell.
Great, thank you. I think that concludes that item on tonight's agenda, which will bring us to the next item, number 10, other business.
Just one thing I wanted to let you know about. Of course, I already mentioned that we have a new council liaison to the Planning Commission, Rachel Burdick. I also wanted to mention, though, that we will have a new sort of attorney presence at our meetings, a presiding attorney. We have a new land use contract, actually, sorry, a new legal contract for somebody to help out with land use related legal matters. including attendance at planning commission hearings and on occasion to planning commission meetings. So we actually have a contract with a different firm than we did for the last few meetings. So Chris Crane is no longer going to be our contracting attorney for land use matters. We now have somebody that's going to be dedicated to those types of, again, land use matters for the entire year of 2026 at least. Her name is Suvani Miller. She's from, is it Miller Nash, I believe is the firm that she's from. And yeah, she's been great so far and will be at least throughout the year, she'll be our land use legal sort of presence at planning commission meetings. So she's also going to be in attendance at our next meeting, the in-person meeting on the 2026 or January 2020. January 2020, oh my gosh, January 26th, 2026. I can't say it for some reason. And she will also, be joined by Councilor Burdick, who will be there in person as well. So it'll be a good opportunity to meet those two new kind of presences at the Planning Commission on the 26th. And that's my business.
Great. Thanks, Eric. Up next, item 11, schedule review.
Yeah, I've probably already gone over all these dates in my summary of what's coming next for you all, so I'll try not to belabor it. But the 26th, our next meeting in 2 weeks, we'll be talking about foothills opportunities and constraints, hoping to actually utilize a cool new tool potentially to talk about that. So might introduce that in March, but we might be able to use that with you all too. So anyway, it will be a good discussion regardless. We have a lot of content to cover. And eventually we are hoping to use something called Mentimeter to sort of do some, get some takes from the Planning Commission without, I guess, without them being immediately public and known to everybody, so that they come up a little bit more anonymously and folks can see kind of the progression of what people are thinking about without, kind of having it be in the conversation format, I suppose. So it'll be interesting. It'll be a little bit new, but we've been testing it out and it works fairly well. So we'll be playing around with that new tool at that work session, most likely, as well as the one in March. And yeah, in early February, we had tentatively planned a work session to continue talking about goal setting with you all for that first meeting in February on the 9th. But because of the postponement of the council goal setting summit, or the goal setting retreat rather, that looks like we're going to have to push that out to probably March, the first meeting in March. So that may end up being canceled, that meeting, and on February 9th. So just a heads up there. If nothing else pops up for that date, that might end up being canceled. And on the 23rd, I will go over this new housing needs analysis, the statewide sort of framework that was developed in the rulemaking specific to that, and giving you a summary of what that looks like. And we'll be talking about that. And again, more foothills on March 9th as well. So a lot of foothills, a lot of goal setting in the coming months. And yeah, I guess that should cover us at least through early March.
Great. Thanks, Eric. I think that takes us through tonight's agenda. So unless anyone has any questions, comments, or final thoughts.
I just have something to say to all of you. Happy New Year.
Thanks,
Happy
Jeff.
New Year
to you.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. When does Commissioner Najak take over then as chair?
The next meeting.
Well, then I think we should do a motion to formally thank Chair Mitchell for all of his service over the past year. It's been a lot of work
Yeah.
preparing and leading the meetings, and I feel like he's done an excellent job. So just want to maybe it doesn't have to be a formal, but just say thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Don.
For a beer at the next meeting, after the next meeting.
Yeah. No, thank you. It's really a privilege to lead such a group who really come committed and having read and have ideas and questions and comments and come prepared. And different lines of thinking, and nobody's as far as I could tell been afraid to say what they're thinking, and that's the point. We're there to deliberate. So really proud to be the chair for this past year. And of course, it's only possible with the help of staff. So Eric, Jessica, Iris, Christina, everyone everyone that's presented and just done a great job of really tipping us and handing everything for us to do. Makes it much easier. So appreciate that.
Humble
With
as
that-
always. Humble as always.
All those kind words. Should we all leave? Go eat dinner.
Yeah, we've been here for just over an hour, so yeah, I think it's time to adjourn. Thanks, everyone.
Yep. Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Good
Thanks
night.
all.
Off we go. And a